Hello and welcome to another episode of the AstraZeneca Women in Tech series. I'm your host, Ben Benton, and today I'm joined by our Senior Director of IT Strategy and Performance from Wilmington, USA, Kate Villari. Kate, a huge welcome to the series. How are you?
Good. Thanks, Ben. I am doing great today. Super happy to be here. I love that you do this and can't wait to jump right in.
Excellent. Well, I'm grateful for you being here. So thanks for giving up your time. And as you might expect, I've got loads of questions for you. So I'm going to jump straight into them. The first question I've got is, what's the hardest, most challenging thing about being a director of IT strategy and performance?
So that's a great question. I think the hardest thing is that it's one thing to set the strategy and the vision, and it certainly helps when you work for a very visionary CIO like Cindy. So that makes that aspect of it a little bit easier. But I think, really priming the organization to be able to execute on the strategy and then execute on the strategy is absolutely the hardest part, because it's always going to involve some level of change. This particular strategy, IT 2025, involves a great deal of change. And in large, really complex, highly regulated organizations, it can be hard to affect change. So I think in a nutshell, that's probably the hardest thing. I could go on and on, but that's the one I would say that keeps me up at night.
Excellent. And I guess if I think about strategy, there are so many, and if I look at it at a sporting context, there are so many ways to win the game of football, so many strategies that you can employ, and everyone probably has their own different theme of how to get there. That must be difficult in kind of going forward with your strategy when other people might be like, well, I'd do something slightly different there, or that might be a better way. That's got to be quite a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, you go into these kinds of things like you do in sports with sort of a gut instinct that this is going to be the way to do it. And in the sports context, you have a split second to make the decision. I think in a business context, you could potentially have a split second, or you could have a long runway. But what we see today with business cycles speeding up at an incredible rate is that you do need to make those decisions quickly. And so you're not always going to make the right decisions. And I think you need to be comfortable with that going in. And, when you're operating in these levels of an organization, people are not going to mince words, or, they're going to let you know how they feel about the direction you're going and the decisions that you're making as a collective. And if they don't like it, you've got to be ready for that. And then you've got to be ready to, adjust and pivot and know that, I'd always rather be moving and always have a bias to action, and would rather my team go forward and we try something and see if it works than sort of sit and wait for too long in the analysis stage of which way should we go. Because, I've certainly seen scenarios where organizations have analyzed and debated and sort of done, decision by committee or consensus. And you just sometimes take so long to reach that consensus, where you could have tried two or three things in that span, and one of them probably would have worked. So, I think that can be really tricky, but it's also part of the fun of it.
I don't envy your job. So yeah, that's my next question. What is the best thing? What's the most enjoyable aspect of your role?
So my favorite thing is really when you can sort of open up a different perspective about how well you're doing as an organization. When you have the goal set and you know what you're driving towards, which we do, right? We addressed that in the last question. We have IT 2025. We know where we're going. But when you can start to look at different ways of achieving that and really optimizing the way these highly talented resources are spending their time, and help them focus on achievement of a specific set of things and then getting there, especially when some of those things seem, almost unattainable. They're just far enough that it's possible to reach those goals, but it's going to be really challenging to do that. when you can bring in tools and tactics and behavioral routines that help organizations get closer to those things and see new ways of working, for me, that's so rewarding and so exciting, because then you are achieving those moonshot type targets that you have, and the satisfaction that you get as a team just really can't be beat. So to me, that's the most exciting part of it. I mean, I think the opportunity to work directly with the CIO to help set the vision, to work with the ITLT. We really have an elite group of leaders here in this organization within IT and beyond. So just the opportunity to work with people like that is truly a gift.
Great stuff. Lovely. So this is my favorite question I always ask is, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
Oh, it's kind of weird. I mean, I think it changed quite a bit. But the first thing I can remember wanting to be was a volcanologist. So somebody who studied volcanoes. Yeah, I don't know. I just always thought it was fascinating. I think the way the Earth and the systems in the Earth work together is just so interesting. And funny enough, last night I just saw in one of my news articles a video of a volcano. Somebody got a drone footage of a volcano, I think in Spain.
Spain,
yeah. Like flowing into swimming pools. So you got to see what that looked like. And of all the articles, and there were about 4 or 5 I should have clicked on first. That was the first one I clicked on, and I think I watched it 2 or 3 times. So I still have that passion in me somewhere, but that's the first thing I can remember.
Oh, excellent. So how did you go from that being wanting to be a volcanologist to ending up where you are right now in a very senior technology role?
No, the answer to that question is longer than we have time for here. But I wandered quite a bit through school trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I always loved math, always loved science. When I started to get exposed to technology, I loved that. I used to fix my family computers back as far as I can remember when we were in DOS and everything else. I used to go to the computer place with my dad as a kid when it was really, really broken, and I would sit there and watch the guys that would fix it. But I started out as a chem major in college and flipped pretty quickly into computer science and then information tech. And the first course I took where I really felt like this is it, this is what I want to do, was at Immaculata University. I had a professor who had recently come back and rejoined from industry. And she was a project manager, and she talked about the rewarding aspects of her job and the challenging aspects of her job. And as she talked about both, I thought, this is it. This is what I want to do, because I loved the connection that a really great project manager makes between what the business area needs to achieve and the technical solutions you can leverage to get that done. I really believe that great PMs play a pivotal role in that work. And I still vividly remember her telling us about how great it could be, but also cautioning that she used to sit sometimes at her desk with a bottle of Pepto-Bismol with a straw in it, because she found herself so overwhelmed and distraught so much of the time, but just couldn't get away from her love of the work. So, that kind of led me into a series of different roles. I started in aerospace software, and we worked for a commercial off-the-shelf software company that did really, really cool things in aerospace and defense. Wandered into the public sector education for almost a decade, where I did a variety of things, but most notably really learned performance management in a very deep way, and leverage a lot of those skills in every role that I've taken on since. Building performance management systems is a different kind of thing, and a really, really rewarding but also challenging kind of work. But I always was feeling, the further I got into that, the further away I felt like I was getting from IT in some ways. So eventually I sort of wandered back, took a data role in education, and really got a deep dive on data and data systems in a more modern context, which was great. And then eventually, was missing the private sector and sort of, some of the pace and the appetite for change. And so that's eventually led me here. But yeah, love IT. I've always loved IT, and still, as you can see, like I did in college, still wandering my way around, testing out different things to see what I can learn.
Brilliant. That's really good to know. And did you always have aspirations at of a young age of being someone very senior in a kind of a really big managerial role? Did you display leadership qualities growing up? And I guess, was it something that came natural to you, or did you have to learn all this stuff?
Yeah, no, I would say it's quite the opposite. I was very, very shy as a kid.
Okay.
I was really, really reserved, scared to death. Probably scared of my own shadow, if you ask my parents. But I was always very active in sports and a bunch of different things. So that kind of helps you come out a little bit and find your own. And then in college, I went, pretty far away from home in a place where I didn't know anybody. And that obviously helped me really kind of come out of my shell. And I did find, when the more and more group projects I did, where somebody else was taking the lead and taking us in a direction that just didn't feel like it made any sense, the more I started to realize, well, I kind of want to control some of these things. And the best way to do that is just going to be to put myself out there and see if you can get the team to redirect. And so, over time in many different jobs, I think that's how I've done it. And I think I had the benefit early in my career of not having a ton of, formal authority. So a lot of the work that I needed to do was purely leadership through influence. I mean, if I couldn't influence, I couldn't get those things done. And, my bosses held me very accountable to progress. So you had to, kind of like I do in this role when we're try and fail and reinvent, I had to do that quite a bit until I could get the people to come with me on their own volition. So I think that's kind of helped me sort of move into more and more of these higher leadership positions as I've traveled through my career.
Brilliant. That's nice to know. Now I've got a bit of a weird question now.
Okay.
Now you're the first person we've probably had in this series that has been heavily involved in strategy, and I've always been interested in people that have a strategic background. Do you play games that, because the game I played when I was young with my granddad, which was a game called Risk, and it was about conquering the world, and it was a very strategic game. Are you someone that would pick that up and you would just be amazing at? Is that something you always strategy focused in any kind of things you do?
I don't think so. I mean, I think I'm always, one thing I will say in terms of games is I loved chess. So like I was in, one of those programs in school where some of the kids got to go do special things on the once a week or once a month, and to sort of like gifted and talented or whatever you call it. And one of the things that I got to do there was start to play chess. And back then, like, no girls played chess. It was all boys in that club. But I tried it and I really liked it. And I got to be pretty good. Now I think I stink, but I was a bit of a formidable opponent back then. And I didn't, I wasn't intimidated by the boys that I was up against, even though I was, this shy, reserved little wallflower of a kid. So I've always loved that game. Started playing it now with my kids. But that's the only one I can think of that I would really truly call a strategy game. But I did love it. And I'll say the other thing is I think this is related to strategy and EQ and leadership and all of it. But I really love to observe human behavior, and try to understand what's driving people and, what are the perverse incentives that may be in play, when you're trying to affect change that you can help people with as you journey along. So That's something that I think about a lot, and I think helps when you're trying to figure this stuff out.
I agree. That's really good. So, Kate, what do you think makes a good senior IT leader? Are there some core skills that you kind of must have?
Yeah, I think so. And I think I'll answer for a couple IT ones, but just generally more along the lines of, what I think about leadership, because I haven't always had IT roles, Ben. So, for me, having had both IT and non-IT, I think has helped me over time get a different perspective on just what I would think of leadership in general. So you may get a stronger answer on the IT specific ones from the many strong women that have come before me in this series. But I think it's really important that the CIO can clearly communicate, and communicate the vision really, really well. And one of the things that I watch in Cindy is, when she does global town halls and global events, she's really superb at getting the level of information to the exact right point that everybody on the call, particularly the folks that are not English as their first language, I think they can understand what she's saying. They can understand what she wants to achieve. And the other thing that she does really well, and there's a few other leaders that I've seen do this expertly in my career, is they can bring these complex and very forward-looking concepts together and break them down into manageable chunks and use relatable examples, that I think really, really help people start to picture themselves doing exactly what she's describing. And, kind of back to your sports analogy, right? When you think about, all the Olympic athletes, they do, and a lot of professional athletes, they'll do the visioning. They'll close their eyes and picture themselves doing their routines, or kind of playing and winning in that sport. And I think that a really great leader and a CIO can help everybody grasp those things by the way they communicate. They obviously have to champion creativity, innovation, and the vision better than anybody. I think for all leaders, EQ is a really big deal, and emotional intelligence is really important, because it's just though at the end of the day, we're all managing people, and if we aren't sensitive to their needs and what they're going through and how they're feeling, then we're going to miss the boat. And I think that the data, you'll see that we deviated from the three-pronged strategy structure a little bit that we see across many parts of AstraZeneca to include that data and AI pillar, because data is becoming so significantly important and such a competitive differentiator. If you can capitalize on the data you have and extract value from it faster than everyone else. So I think understanding all those things is really important. In general, in leadership, I really believe in the leaders eat last philosophy. I think that's really important. Servant leadership, all that stuff has really, really been important to me. I really want to put my team first, and I really want them to feel like, I consider their needs ahead of mine. And you've constantly got to, sort of reconcile what are the needs of the organization, what are the needs of the team, and, what are the needs of the individual. So it can be a lot for all levels of manager, I think, to try to figure out how to do that well. But those are the kinds of things that I think are really important. And I think the other favorite leadership book, Leaders Eat Last, is a Simon Sinek book. But there's a Ben Horowitz book that I think it's The Hard Thing About Hard Things, but he talks about, just leadership in general, and being a CEO, and how many mistakes he would make, and how important it is to recognize that you're going to be learning on the job to an extent. And I really admired how open and vulnerable he was about how managing his own psychology was kind of one of the most challenging things about being in a high level job. And I think that stuff applies to all leaders everywhere. So those are some of the things that I think are really important.
That's amazing. You give me lots of key things there, and I guess for people that externally that maybe don't know you, Kate, I can certainly vouch, because I've spoke to many of the people that work in your team, and they have all said what an amazing leader you are, and that you do really, live by the fact that you eat last, whether that's a literal thing or not. I don't know if you go into the canteen and let them all eat first, but
I try to, but stop. I'm gonna get all emotional, Ben. Don't do that. Don't do that to me on the spot.
This is my penultimate question anyway.
Yeah.
So, and this series is designed to showcase the amazing talent that we've got, so that we can inspire and empower more women across the world. So you are playing your part in this, Kate. What advice would you give to other women looking into a career in tech?
That's a great question. So, and it really draws me, Ben, to the empowerment program. I've been sponsoring that since I joined, and I think we're on our third cohort now, which is a program specifically designed for women in IT to really help them lean in. One of the things I see, and one of the things I challenge the cohorts with on the first call, you'll see, and a lot of these women are often, kind of more early in their career and trying to figure out how to grow themselves and do some of the same things that I think I've described. How do I really lean in and open myself up to new opportunities? And I think about the confidence gap. I remember when my little sister actually sent me the confidence gap article that talks about the differences between how men and women often approach work, and how a man will maybe look at a new opportunity and read all the qualifications and say, oh yeah, 99% of them I can do, even if they don't have the skills and experience. And a woman will read it and they're probably going to take the exact opposite approach. And I'm totally guilty of this, of saying, well, I could probably do, I think I'm good at those top 3 or 4, but I'm not sure about the rest. And actually, even in a conversation or two with Cindy and some of the other mentors, they'll point out to me, but Kate, you just explained these 5 or 6 things that you've achieved where you've actually done all those things. And either I just hadn't put it together that way, or my perspective tends to be, a little more critical of myself than maybe it should be. But one thing that I challenge some of the women on those empowerment calls to do is like turn your camera on just to start. I think about Sheryl Sandberg, and she talks about taking a seat at the table, and how even she, as the COO of Facebook, I think she's still the COO of Facebook, but she would go into meetings in her career in different points, and she would let the men sit at the table, and she would sit in a chair on the side of the room. So I think there's even virtual ways that we do that we need to stop. So, I would say, really, really lean in, turn your cameras on, be present, be active. Don't be afraid to raise your hand and make a comment or ask a question. I mean, there really is value in offering whatever, even if the question feels to you like it may be, an elementary level question. Just ask, because you may find as you explore the answer that you're onto something after all, and that other people had that question, or maybe you can, kind of make a connection that otherwise wouldn't have been there. So I just think participating, taking a seat at the table and leaning in is a huge piece of it. I will say that AstraZeneca does such an impeccable job of trying to provide opportunities for personal and professional development, far exceeds anywhere I've ever worked. So I think, it's a little bit on the individual to try to capitalize on some of those opportunities and explore leading self, leading people, leading business. Try to aspire for some of those programs. Ask to be included in an empowerment program if you can. And then I think a lot of this too, Ben, plays into the inclusion and diversity agenda, because when you really think, we just had somebody challenge us on the last empowerment call. Do we bring in men as part of the program and as part of the conversation? And it was a good challenge. I mean, we do try to really have a structured program specifically to walk an individual through, here's how you can explore some of these tricky things that often affect women, like women often struggle with, kind of some traditional gender roles and work-life balance, and how to manage a lot of those things as you take on higher level positions. And they're real challenges. I mean, I experienced them myself, but I think just really lean into those programs, take advantage of them. And, I do think as part of our inclusion agenda, making sure we have those conversations about race, about gender, and about all other aspects of diversity, and what we have in common and how we can help each other. Even like how can I be mentored by a digital native? That was something my boss and I used to talk about at our last company. He had somebody very, very young teaching him new ways of working and new ways of thinking and how to manage millennials. And I thought that was just such a cool concept. So all that stuff, I think, can benefit women as they try to find their way through what can be challenging, personal and professional circumstances.
Excellent. You've got plenty of advice there. I'm sure we could speak for days on this. And likewise, and I really admire the fact that you do all these things and you're involved in all the empowering courses. So I think it's so important. And you touched upon actually bringing men into the conversation. And this isn't a plug for me, but I have an article coming out in a few weeks around men as allies, because I think it's really crucial in that kind of gender balance and gender equality, and equally around confidence as well. And you mentioned some really key things there, that sometimes it is just having the confidence for women to speak up and ask a question or sit at the table and feel like they are part of that conversation. They deserve to be there. So and all these things I think that we're doing help raise that confidence across women in tech.
That's so true, Ben. And I think one of my favorite aspects, I mean, I really think you're a beacon for that kind of inclusion. And I love that this series isn't being produced by a woman. It's being produced by one of the men that's leading in our talent acquisition area. So it just that in itself is such a positive signal within AstraZeneca and beyond on how seriously we take these things. And you just reminded me of another thing. When I was at Barclays in my last role, we had Eric. He's a blind man who has climbed to the top of Mount Everest and has kayaked down the Grand Canyon. Both equally incredible feats. And he's such a great, he's a hilarious presenter, really, really fascinating. It was a true privilege to listen to him talk about his life. But one of the things that was most striking to me about how he described his life and his journey is, everything he does is sort of reaching out into the darkness and having the faith and the confidence to reach out into the darkness and take the next step. And I think that's such a great message for leaders and, for aspiring women. Like you don't maybe know how it's going to go or what's going to happen next, but just have that faith, have the confidence in yourself that you'll figure it out, and if you mess up, there's a safety net here, we're here to support you, but go take the next step and see what happens. So I love that you do that, and I can't wait to read the article. I'm sure it's going to be really, really good.
Oh, thank you. Great stuff. Now we have gone way over time, so
I'm not surprised.
My last question was going to be, what more do you think we could be doing to support greater female representation across technology? So if you can give me a 30-second quick fire answer, and then I'll wrap it up.
I think, I'm sure there's more we could be doing. I think there's a lot of good things we are doing, and I want to just make sure we don't stop any of those. So that's my 30-second answer, and I invite anyone from across AstraZeneca that's got a good idea that they want us to look at, send it over. Jackie and I are happy to take a look and bring it forward for consideration. And we're always open to great ideas.
Perfect. Very nice and succinct. Well, Kate, that brings us to the end. So thank you so much for coming on. You've given some amazing content. I could talk for hours, but thank you for coming up. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Ben. I am so honored to be here. I appreciate you having me. It is totally my fault we ran over as usual, but have a great rest of the day. And thanks again for including me.
Don't worry. Thank you. And to the viewers, thanks for watching again. We hope you've enjoyed the episode. If you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe to the series for all the latest episodes. But in the meantime, please take care and we'll see you in a few weeks. Bye for now.